Hello and welcome to the Share Talk interview. We're joined by Gervaise Heddle, who's CEO at Greatland Gold. How are you today, Gervaise?
Very well, Zach. Thanks for having me.
Right. The first point, which I didn't know before, was that you're a CFA, which is just one of the chosen few on that. But big turnaround in your stock price to start the year, and big developments as well on the fundamental front. What's the most important thing that the investors should focus on at this stage?
Well, the key driver for the company at the moment is our Ernest Giles project, which is clearly our flagship project now. At the beginning of this year, back in January, we announced some positive drilling results where we delineated two large zones of gold mineralisation there. And we got a good stock price reaction from that. But I don't think investors fully understood the significance of that at the time. However, one of the largest gold companies in the world did, Newmont Mining. They had a look at those results. And they are very interested in those results, plus also other previous soil sampling results we have on the property. And so last week we announced an agreement with them whereby we're giving them a 6-month term to come and do some work on the property, apply their own proprietary exploration methods, and also they get a right of first refusal over the property should we wish to sell or joint venture it within the next 6 months.
So you made it all look very easy as compared to other mining companies. Is that, that's the right sort of relationship to have, that it's not master and slave, it's definitely a partnership thing? Is that a fair thing to say?
Well, at the moment, it's early days in the relationship in the sense that we don't have a formal joint venture with them. This is almost like an extended due diligence on their part. They have access to all our database, but they also have the right to go out and apply their own proprietary technologies that are adept at finding gold undercover. So they believe they have some technologies that are very good at finding big gold systems, and that's what they're looking for out there, 10, 15, 20 million ounce type deposit. If they get a sniff that there is something like that out there from their work, then we'll see what happens. But obviously, some potential sort of joint venture would be on the table then.
Well, that leads me nicely into the first question from shareholders. How will Greatland reconcile the conflict between the need for confidentiality with Newmont and the legal requirement for disclosure release of price-sensitive information to the public /market?
It's a very important question. It was one that is dealt with under the agreement. In essence, we have quite strict confidentiality conditions with Newmont, but they understand that we also have an obligation to the market to announce material events, and so that's included as a specific thing in that.
So you're not just saying, be patient, wait and see, we'll let you know whenever something happens. You can't say, you're being more diplomatic than that.
Bit diplomatic, but look, for example, if there are results that are clearly material, then we would be obliged to announce those to the market, yes.
Right. I think, the second question sort of leads on with that. Are we to receive an RNS regarding the results of the gravity survey at Ernest Giles, or will this cause a conflict with the recent agreement with Newmont? So it's the same sort of thing, isn't it?
Well, the gravity survey is completely separate because that's our own work. So we're under confidentiality regarding the work that Newmont does, but not our own work. We can continue to do work on the property and talk about it as much as we want. That gravity survey and the passive seismic survey started before we signed the agreement, so we'll definitely be updating the market with those results. My team is also undertaking a review of all the gold targets because we've acquired more territory. We also just announced this a week we acquired an airborne survey as well over the entire property, a detailed survey. So there's lots of new targets coming out from that. So we're going to be updating the market probably within the next couple of months about all the different targets that we see out there independently of the work that Newmont's doing.
So that sort of leads into the next one. Next question: has the gravity survey works led to the decision to increase the licence area at Ernest Giles?
No, the decision to increase the licence area wasn't driven by the gravity work. It was driven by the fact that we had successful drilling results at the end of the year. We see this as being a big new gold district in essence, and we wanted to make sure that we had all the ground that we needed to have. What we didn't want to do was have a discovery, enter into an agreement with Newmont, and then have somebody sort of riding our coattails and coming in and taking the nearby ground. We want to make sure that we dominate the area.
Right. I met you, I think, 2 or 3 months ago at an investor show, and I promise to remember the names of all your other projects,
Yes.
which I haven't. But the question here is, whilst the Ernest Giles project is no doubt one of the most important for investors, it'd be very good if Greatland could provide an update on each of the other projects, as it has gone a bit silent on these, especially Brahmas, which we should have had an update on that by now.
Well, we did have the Brahmas results out yesterday, so I think that question came in before those. But yes, those results were published yesterday, an extension of the VMS system there. It was only 2 drilling holes, but we've extended that VMS system over 1.5 kilometres of strike. And investors should expect that we're going to have more to say about Havieron and the Tasmanian projects as well over the next few months. But obviously, just in the last few weeks, we've been very busy with the the Ernest Giles project and making sure that the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed on that.
Right, but I mean the other projects. I mean, to give us an idea of scale, I mean, could they be separate companies? I mean, are they that significant, or they're add-ons to the main thing?
It's a very interesting question. I mean, Ernest Giles potentially could get to the point where it's its own company. Havieron is, I think, a big enough target to justify its own vehicle. It's an IOCG target, coincident gravity and magnetic anomaly of about 1 kilometre by 1 kilometre, good previous historic drilling results there, so that's a very significant asset for us. And then we've got the Tasmanian properties, and the market isn't as interested in the Tasmanian properties at the moment, but I think they are properties that could be part of an ASX IPO at some point when the gold cycle picks up. We've always thought that because they are valuable properties with demonstrated high-grade gold mineralisation. So there's a few different things going on there, but certainly Ernest Giles and Havieron will be our sort of key focus over the next 12 months.
Right. I mean, that's the last question. What have you got to offer to investors in 2017? Presumably, the door is wide open in terms of scenarios, depending on what Newmont come up with.
Well, that's right. So, look, the Ernest Giles is for good reason going to be the main focus of investors. Hopefully there'll be work starting at Havieron in the not too distant future. Plus, we're also looking at other opportunities as well, other acquisitions, earnings, etc. So it'll be nice to surprise investors with something on that front too.
But I mean, don't you think with the 5 projects that's enough? You've got enough on your plate, or you're always looking for new stuff?
Always looking for more opportunities. If we can find something where we think we can get a good deal and make money for shareholders, we're always going to do that. So, which may mean at some point we need to refocus and spin some other opportunities out or do something with them. But we're always looking for ways to make money.
I normally try and make mining sector CEOs try and look presidential with an overview of the mining space, especially in the wake of the China downgrade from Moody's.
Yes.
But how do you think we're looking now?
Well, we started a bull market in commodities in the beginning of 2016. That's some commodities have clearly done better than others. Cobalt and lithium have done well, and they're sort of stories that people are talking about. I expected that gold and precious metals would do better than they have. They've done okay, but I still think they can do better than they have. So that's what I'm looking for, is maybe a cooling of the optimism regarding the US economy and the new Trump America, maybe a cooling in that regard, and so maybe you'd see some of the precious metals actually start to pick up.
But I mean, we've got interest rates going up every 3 months in the US. That's not helpful, is it?
Not helpful for precious metals, but you're coming from such an extreme where you've quintupled the monetary base. Interest rates are still on the floor, plus the monetary base in other countries is still rising. Their interest rates are still zero. Even if you raise the short end of the curve, to 100 basis points, 150 basis points, you've been suppressing the long end of the curve with this monetary base expansion for so long. I'm not convinced. I think the Fed is just basically, and all the central banks are massively behind the curve on this. So you could get a shaking in confidence in fiat currencies, and that's suddenly when you do get a real surge in gold.
Or even funnier, they would have to lower rates later in the year or next year.
Well, I know. I mean, what happens now if the US has an economic blip? If Trump gets impeached and at the same time you get a negative GDP print, it's where do they go? I mean, they're absolutely back against the wall at the moment. So, I've got no problem being in the precious metal space for the next few years.
Excellent. Gervaise Heddle, CEO at Greatland Gold. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Zach. Thank you very much.